Hey everyone, welcome back to Cellar podcast. We have Christian and myself, Thor. You can't really see it, but I definitely get the helmet on. There's my room behind me.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I'm not going to turn out the lights, but the helmet does glow in the dark.
Pretty cool.
You can buy yours at Walmart. But anyway, I'm going to take it off because it's really hot. Okay, we're here to discuss Thor: Love and Thunder, newest Marvel movie. I think Christian and I had somewhat similar yet also somewhat split opinions on the movie. What do you think about that?
That's very accurate. As people heard before with our first impressions that we usually do.
Yes, I will put those in right here. Christian, what do you think?
Very underwhelming, but definitely keeps current with the recent Marvel films of seemingly underwhelming the entire time, with the exception of Spider-Man. But as you said, definitely had some enjoyable moments. Not terrible, not fantastic.
Yeah, I quite enjoyed it. Everything with Gore, Christian Bale, Godbusher, the black and white contrasting with the very colorful world of the gods and Asgard and everything. I was stoked to see Jane Foster back, especially as the Mighty Thor this time because it's a great comic run. Yeah, I enjoyed it. Wasn't great, wasn't bad. Okay, cool.
So yeah, as you heard, the thing that kept going in and out of my head the whole movie was underwhelming, and that's kind of the sense and feel I got really from beginning to end. Yes, I think Christian Bale was a very good villain. I kind of liked the route they went with that. Like, a lot of good symbolism in there that we can get into. But long story short, it's basically about a guy that like puts all his faith into one god, and kind of comes to find out the god's just a piece of shit, and he literally watched his daughter die and was doing everything for a god that really existed, but didn't do anything or didn't give any shits about him. So then there's this magical sword that appears, a sword of evil,
the Necro Sword.
The Necro Sword that can slay any god in the universe, and kind of calls him out. Then we have our movie. So it was pretty good setup. Definitely not kind of what I was expecting. So like I said, that aspect I did like it, but just I don't know. I almost walked out of this movie thinking like I don't really understand like the need or really the want for this film. Like I don't know what it does with the future, with the MCU, and that's kind of a current trend. I know we've talked about here and kind of between ourselves that the MCU, in my opinion, kind of seems a bit lost right now. Like they don't know. It doesn't feel like it's building up to anything. It doesn't feel like all the other movies kind of connect or kind of pick off for the last one left off of, so to speak. And yeah, I was okay with kind of Thor's, I guess, ending or going on with the Guardians. So again, that's up for debate whether you think this movie should or shouldn't have been made. But yeah, I don't know. I didn't like hate it at all. I think it was, in comparison to Shang-Chi and Black Widow, like it was much more entertaining for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Definitely. By far, definitely more than Doctor Strange 2. But it still, to me, just had that same negative cloud around it that those other films did, that just felt very, very underwhelming to me, and not much payoff, and really was a film that really had nothing to lose. Like in a lot of the other, especially in phase 3 and obviously with Endgame and before that Infinity War, like the whole movie, like there's a lot to lose for the characters. Like you're kind of always on the edge of your seat, and I don't know, ever really since No Way Home, I have not had that same feeling of anticipation or lust to go see these movies. Like it's kind of depressing. Acting wise, like the cast wise, like they're all all did a great job. It was good to see Jane Foster come back here. It was kind of interesting, but again, didn't really pay off too much. Like she kind of was thrown in the movie, and then again, spoiler alert, we're obviously talking about the film. The whole purpose of her character is she's dying of cancer, so you kind of know she's gonna die. So you're like, all right, well, there goes the mighty Thor. We're not gonna have her. Again, anything's possible with the multiverse, and so that's a whole other issue. But narratively speaking, like, she's kind of done, or so you think, but she is done. So
she's
it's
in
just
Valhalla. She met
I
Heimdall.
think you and I think you and I both sort of thought going into this movie that maybe they were going to wrap up Thor's character and kind of she was going to, I guess, take the mantle, for lack of a better term.
That's exactly what I thought was going to happen.
Taking over for Thor.
Yeah,
and of course, as we talk about a lot, I'm sure we can do it right now. We could probably plot a better film for this movie, like we do with all the other Marvel films.
We do that a lot.
But yeah, it's just I don't know, but I don't know about what you think about that term I keep saying, underwhelming, but that's the sense I really had the whole movie. Yeah, it had some good laughs and a couple good feel good moments, like him and Jean and Thor's reconnecting. That was kind of cool to see. But
and I know Korg is your favorite.
I don't know it. Yeah, I mean, as you can see, Taika Waititi, great, love him, funny. I think you said it best, and it did kind of stick with me. I think this movie particularly, you can tell they really restrained Taika Waititi's creativity, like totally.
I think so. I have that in my notes too.
He had a lot of. He threw a lot of, you could definitely tell different, jokes he had in there, and obviously, him voicing Korg. Those were the, funniest moments for me. Anytime, Korg, when he was describing the story of Thor, kind of throughout the film.
Yeah, of course.
That was that. But then there's just other stuff in there that's just like, the childish, dumb fart, teenager jokes that we talk about that just take away from the movie, and take away from the importance of the characters and character development, all that good stuff that we like. But yeah, I just definitely, I had, of course, high expectations for this movie that, definitely weren't met. And I think that's not an unrealistic, expectation going into the, any MCU, the standard they've set. You should have high expectations.
Yeah.
So, like I said, definitely enjoyable at the very least. But I don't know what the movie wants. If it's at the end, of course, Thor will return, because they always gotta sort of not end on a cliffhanger, but leave you wanting more. This film really didn't leave me wanting more. I could I could definitely go on not seeing Thor in the future MCU films and be totally fine.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess I walked out of the theater and I enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong, but I think this movie is kind of like Toy Story 4, right? How, I mean, you and I saw Toy Story 4 together. And it's a fun movie. It's fine. Mm-hmm. It ties up a lot of ends that didn't need tying up. But at the same time, Toy Story 4 ends and you're like, that was cute, but we didn't really need it because Toy Story 3 was such a good ending. So to try and
I love Toy Story 4, but Toy Story 4 would be I think Toy Story 4 would have been a great kind of spin-off show for Disney Plus type of thing. Like whatever happened to Bo Peep.
Right.
That I think could have been a very good, interesting, like whatever, side shows that Disney is making millions of dollars off of. I totally see movie, that. Like this would be a good kind of spin-off show.
Right. With this movie, my initial thought when I heard that Jane Foster was going to be in it as the Mighty Thor was, great. Chris Hemsworth has been Thor since what, 2010-ish? So,
I think a little later, 11, 12.
11 maybe. I think that sounds right. But in my mind, I love Chris Hemsworth as Thor, but at this point, time to move on, right? And the best thing to do is Jane Foster, the Mighty Thor. So I figured this movie would be a way to get Jane Foster over with the audience and,
a passing of the torch.
Exactly, a passing of the torch film. So towards the end, when Gore makes it to eternity to wish for his daughter to come back, they really had me going that like, oh, Gore is just gonna wish for Jane's cancer to be cured. Problem solved. Thor retires into the sunset, and Jane continues on as the mighty Thor. Nope, Jane dies. So like, okay, the point of having her in the movie then was to further develop Thor's character in terms of love and loss, which is something that apparently he's been dealing with since the Dark World-ish, but hasn't really been brought to light because there's been so many other overarching storylines, namely Thanos, that we just didn't have time to explore Thor's love life until now.
Right.
Now it just seems like kind of too little too late, considering the last time we saw Jane Foster, I mean, technically was Infinity War, but narratively in that timeline, no, I'm sorry, it was Endgame, but narratively in that timeline, it was the Dark World, right? Because that's when she was getting I think it was the Reality Stone pulled out of her.
Yeah, the ether.
Yeah, so really, it just feels like Jane Foster, an incredible character in the Mighty Thor, was used as nothing more than a simple plot device. She literally got refrigerated. Do you know that term, refrigerated?
No, enlighten me.
Okay, so that term loosely comes from a Green Lantern comic book where Kyle Rayner's villain, I forget his name, found Kyle Rayner's girlfriend, cut her up into little pieces, and shoved her in the refrigerator. Her death was only used as a way to further accentuate the character of Kyle Rayner, which is exactly what happened to Jane Foster here, right?
Yeah.
I mean, her death and the idea of her, having an untimely end when they just, started to reconcile, brought Thor to have enough heart to foster the child of Gore.
Right. And that ending, like the whole movie, like Love and Thunder, it's like, okay, clearly that's referring to Jane and Thor. But then
that's
at the end,
thought,
it's like, well, no, it's Thor and his now adopted daughter that he, I guess, all of a sudden loves and cares about. It's the, given the fact it's the daughter of a guy that just slayed and killed fucking hundreds of other gods and tried to kill him. He's like, oh, okay, I'll be your parent. It's fine.
I'm pretty sure that was also Chris Hemsworth's daughter. Fun fact. Or one of them.
Yeah, that's great. That's cute. But it's like,
yeah,
that to me just like spoiled an already kind of tarnished film. And like, really, I'm like, okay, it just seems like, again, with the exception of No Way Home, the current trend of the MCU, it's really trying to fucking push me off the bandwagon of the MCU. It's really trying very hard to get me to just kind of jump ship and be like, I'm sorry, I'm all set with these movies. I mean,
well, the other interesting thing about this film is that in regards to the rest of the MCU, I mean, TV shows included, right? I mean, Loki and like Miss Marvel just came out, Hawkeye. It seems like the trend of Phase 4 is to introduce new characters, correct?
More or less, yeah.
Totally. Okay. Thor Love and Thunder had a clear path to introduce Jane Foster as the new Thor and just blatantly chose not to do it, which goes against the entire Phase 4 plan. It seems like, again, I'm not in the writer's room. I don't know for sure.
Exactly. Like if there's any hope of where is this leading to, right? Because that's what I think every Marvel fan should be looking at. Like, what is this leading up to? What is what is the new Avengers film going to look like? Are we going to get the new Avengers, like the actual new Avengers? That's kind of, I agree. That's sort of what I was thinking. Well, like, okay, I respect this. They're introducing new characters because obviously the original Avengers aren't going to be here forever. They can't be. It's been 10 to 15 years. You have to move on if you want to keep this train going. You got to introduce new and intriguing characters that people are going to get on board with. And so that's exactly how I felt when she died. I'm like, okay, so what the hell was the point of her in the movie other than to just be like, Thor, don't worry, don't forget to love and move on. Like, she was like just a simple, like you said, just a plot device to just, I guess, get Thor over his grief of, pushing people away. And again, something that really we didn't see, like his whole, they kind of framed it in this movie with Korg kind of narrating throughout that Thor was all depressed kind of, because him and Jane weren't together. It's like, no, he was depressed because he didn't kill Thanos, and Thanos then wiped out half the universe, and he felt, firsthand guilt for that.
Right.
That's why he was all depressed and started drinking and became a slob and kind of redeemed himself. It wasn't about Jane. Yeah, exactly. It wasn't. Jane was like on the back burner. I'm sure he was thinking of that, I guess, at the time. And they kind of, I didn't really care for too how in that timeline, in the Endgame and Infinity War timeline, they kind of poo-pooed like him and Jane's relationship, like, oh, we just kind of didn't see eye to eye and we moved on. It's like, well, I think that we did deserve some type of explanation, I think, at the time, or a scene, or some type of dialogue totally between them on what happened. So I did like that, how they kind of went back to it, but to kind of frame his depression and all that around her was so lazy, and I don't know, just kind of arrogant from, again, the Marvel, the MCU like writers room. It's just and that's kind of my point, like you said, with just killing off Jane Foster's an introduced character as the mighty Thor. It's like there just seems to not be any cohesiveness to the MCU's plan right now. I seriously just think they know they have such a strong fan base. They know people like us are going to go pay money to see their new films, right? To pay the Disney Plus subscription, either way, to watch the shows or not watch the shows. They really don't care, because people are going to subscribe if they, a young girl sees Miss Marvel and has a comic book from her, a toy, like, oh, I want to watch that. Then their parent pays $13 a month to get Disney Plus. That's I think what they're sort of banking on right now. And it's almost like, oh, we'll figure it out later where this is going. And I just think, if whatever at this point in this current trend, if whatever it's leading up to, there's going to be so many plot holes to just poke through and be like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense, this doesn't make sense, this doesn't make sense. What people like us that watch all the movies, pay attention, watch the shows and read articles online and stuff, and stay on top of social media, whatnot. I just think whatever they build towards, it's like, whatever it is, they won't care about filling in all the gaps.
Yeah, I think the majority of the audiences will overlook some of those details. I have enough faith in Marvel still to think that they'll fill in the majority of those things. However, with an ever expanding universe like this, where it seems like every movie that you watch goes further and further out from the main focal point of what I think the MCU would be focusing on or should be focusing on, I agree. It basically lends itself to more plot holes and stretching of logic and that kind of thing. And I know logic in a superhero movie is like a really tough thing to think about, but you take my point. I do want to go over some of the things I have in my notes about things I did like about this movie, because surprisingly there were things I did like about this movie. Like Christian mentioned earlier, and you heard in my first impressions, I think I talked about it there. I absolutely loved Christian Bale as Gore the God Butcher. I mean, he was just fantastic. His acting, I don't even care, this is a superhero movie, it was off the charts. It was so good. I loved the character design, the very like white muted colors. Even in the beginning, you could see his colors start to fade when he picked up the Necrosword initially. This was only made even better when they went into the Shadow Realm, which was all black and white. It was just a monochrome filter on the entire thing. But what made it even sexier was when Jane Foster lit up the hammer Mjolnir as a light, basically. And you could see on her shoulder and the side of her face that there were very, very slight colors beginning to become illuminated. So you could see that, like, that touch of color floating through the monochrome. This was done again whenever Gore got into a fight with either Valkyrie, Mighty Thor, or Thor. And every time the weapons would clash, there would be this big bolt of light. You'd see a bunch of color, and then it would fade back to monochrome. It was just an incredible way to use lighting. And in the same sense, if you watch earlier parts of the movie, when you have a lot of Taika Waititi's personal touch, there's very bright colors, especially when they go to the stage of the gods, whatever it's called. Colors everywhere. and they even take disguises from the emotion gods, which are very centered around the bright colors of their robes. And it's a nice contrast between the villain and the heroes, and just the visuals of the colors really, without words, discuss their differences. I thought that was a great point. That's probably like the monochrome versus the color and Christian Bale are my two biggest takeaways from the movie. Natalie Portman was great as Jane Foster, once again, as the mighty Thor, giving her character like an extra level of responsibility rather than just being the nerdy love interest for Thor. Her unfortunate death was not cool because, well, we already talked about that. The fight choreography I really liked. I know you and I haven't really talked about that yet, but especially in scenes where Jane and Thor were teaming up on Gore, it was really cool. Just like, that's all I can say about it. It's really cool. But I genuinely think that Bale's Gore is probably in like my top 5 MCU villains. He was just incredible.
Yeah, that's something that a lot of the standalone MCU movies kind of struggled with, right? Was creating a good villain.
Oh yeah,
totally. A long-lasting villain.
Totally.
I mean, really, arguably up until Thanos, you can pick your poison of just the failed villains, and how I just think if it wasn't for such strong hero writing and hero plot points, narratives, all that good stuff with our heroes and their backgrounds, their stories, the villain kind of, I guess in that sense, it was okay for them to sort of take the back seat and not be sort of a standout. But I think in this movie, Bale was like the standout out of all
100%.
the characters.
Yeah,
it's almost like, as disappointed as I was with this movie, this might sound a little dumb, but it's almost like, in my opinion, this movie didn't deserve Christian Bale, because he's just such a good he's such a good like method actor. He can just take any role and just master it. And just the believability with his character was so well done. How when anytime you can show and understand strong sympathy for the villain, I think it's really doing something right.
Mm-hmm.
And the I loved the design of his character and the lighting and all that. All, like, again, in every Marvel movie, for the most part, the one thing they always nail is the attention to detail, and the effects are usually kind of top notch. Obviously, big budgeted films. I mean, no, yeah, it's hit or miss, but that's kind of usually like the least of my complaints with
generalization. Yeah, I guess you could say that. Some of the CGI in this movie, though, was quite terrible.
Yeah, the beginning was rough for sure.
Yeah.
But with Bale's character, I mean, I think.
Oh yeah, the effects on Gore, awesome. Those were fantastic.
And I think you'd be able to tell what my favorite part about his whole makeup was the dark yellow Sith eyes were really, really, that was a nice touch to me.
That was the only color on him.
I like that a lot. It add just such a menacing look to him.
He's like the Jar Jar Binks Sith Lord.
Yeah, but no, he was, like I said, definitely I think the standout, and one of the few things I really enjoyed about the movie. I think the fight choreography was fine. One part I thought was really stupid was when like Thor gave all those kids kind of the power of Thor for like a short time, and
I mean, I see the purpose of it in retrospect, but at the time it was like, yeah, that's kind of cool, but now it's like, So wouldn't it be kind of cool to just see Thor rip through the shadow monsters himself?
Yeah, like they're just kids. They don't need to like fight. Like, you have Thor and Mighty Thor. I mean, you could have done so much more in that scene with them, just them two alone. And, he was by himself, and then, had the Zeus's cannon, as I talked about, as Thunderbolt.
Yeah.
But, they could have done something, better with her kind of coming to help out, which she wasn't initially, obviously, because he didn't want her to.
Well, yeah, but I mean, especially since her using the power that time was going to seal her fate.
Right, exactly. Like, I don't know. We could again talk about such a better, plot points and just make the movie better, just discussing it, as we tend to do with some of these movies that kind of let us down. But I mean, like I said, compared to some of the recent films, again, with the exception of No Way Home, I definitely enjoy this one the most. I think it's because it's an original Avenger film, but also because I really like Taika Waititi, so I'll go see anything that guy makes, of course. And always found Korg to be one of the bearable, funny, intentionally funny characters, and kind of comic reliefs in the MCU that's bearable. I don't know, what did you think about I guess the brief like Guardians touch on this movie? I mean, I think it was, I didn't, not that I was expecting to see them more, but it was almost like, oh yeah, hey, Thor's with the Guardians, and like, see you later, bye. Like, it was kind of quick. Like, not that I wish we saw them more, but I don't know.
It was fine. I mean, I figured they would be even before it was official that they were going to get included. I figured they were going to be.
It had to be,
just based on the end of Endgame when they all kind of run off into the sunset together. I do kind of wish that Thor's training montage was in it for a little bit more, rather than just, oh, he got buff again. Like, okay, that's cool, but like, I don't know. I just figured like all the different things that they could have done with Thor and the different Guardians helping him to get fit again and like lose the Lebowski gut. And I mean, they were fine. The Guardians actually are a big they committed the most crimes in this movie for me in terms of predictable comedy. Like that one shot from the trailer, and I know I've mentioned this to you before, when Star-Lord's like, just look into the eyes of the people you love, and then Thor kind of like, I hate that.
It's dumb.
It's
kind of hoping that was one of those scenes and dialogue points that weren't in the movie.
Yeah. I mean, I also love Taika Waititi, as you know. I mean, What We Do in the Shadows it's like an all-time favorite comedy for me.
Still gotta watch it. That's
it's
high on my priority to watch list, because he's.
But that's the thing, right? That's where I'm gonna base this next point of argument on, is that Taika Waititi is a very funny guy, and we know that from seeing other projects of his. However, I think while the script in this movie was pretty good, it was good. I mean, the emotional parts and the character development parts served their purpose. They did their job. However, they always got undercut with that Marvel comedy, right?
Yeah.
Like when Thor's being held down by Gore, and Gore's borderline torturing him. He's like, call the axe. And then Thor goes, I will when you call a dentist. Haha, okay. I mean, I know Taika Waititi like worked on the script, and I don't want to like knock him too much, but I think part of the reason why I'm having such a conflict with this script is because I believe that Taika Waititi was kind of under the restrictions of a studio, right? Like when you watch What We Do in the Shadows, and if anyone watching this has not seen What We Do in the Shadows, I cannot recommend it highly enough. Taika Waititi's comedy in that script is spot on. I mean, the timing that he hits with those jokes in that movie is absolutely perfect. And I'm not saying that there aren't like serious moments that get undercut by comedy, because most films and most works have to do that to, that's how they lighten things. And that's fine. It's just Marvel is a big offender of doing it every single time, hundreds of times. The comedy in this Thor movie, similar to Ragnarok, I thought, and similar to almost every Marvel movie, becomes like very predictable and overbearing. Like the goats, for example. I understand that goats were like an inside joke for, between Taika Waititi and James Gunn, I guess, working on the movies. But like after the third time the goat screamed, I'm like, how many more times are we gonna have to hear this in the movie?
Right.
It's just not funny anymore. And then we heard it like till the end of the movie. So like I know Taika Waititi has the talent and the mind for comedy. It's just that I feel like when you, and it's not just him, like anybody you put in this major studio backdrop, especially of superheroes with such tight deadlines and high commitments, it's almost like a creativity stifler. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep. Totally.
But otherwise, the script was good. I mean, it's just the comedy that I hate. I can't stand it. I just don't like it.
Yeah, it's almost like you wonder what was, since Taika Waititi is obviously a comedic first type of director. That's what he's best known for. Especially satirical comedy. That's kind of
Jojo Rabbit, yeah,
his go-to. you kind of wonder like what parts did he want in there, what parts did Marvel want in there, because like a lot of the jokes, where you could see Taika Waititi kind of wanting in the movie,
Mhm.
especially that inside joke with the goats, and maybe the dentist line, but at the same time maybe he didn't want some of those in there, but Marvel's like, no, you have to have this in there for whatever
Could
reason,
be.
because they think it sells, and it's child teenager comedy that gets all the kids in the theater to laugh. Because I know there are
Right.
some in the theater we saw, and when the goats first appeared, the only people laughing were all kids, so
Right.
that's clearly who it was for. So again, they know what they're doing. I don't. That's why I'm here, there. But yeah, I totally see what you mean. It's like I think he's just such a comedic genius. When you have him, directing, let's face it, like a film is, the magnitude of Thor, like I said, an original Avenger, you kind of wonder if they're like, all right, you're very intelligent when it comes to comedy, and you have a lot of good stuff here, but this is what has to be in the movie, or you can't do it. Like, I'm sure those conversations were had between him and the studio. So you
Yeah.
do kind of wonder if he kind of had full reins of the movie, what type of movie we would get, and would it be kind of a more satirical driven film, or would it
It
kind of
was
be
a little
somewhat
bit
of
in
a
the
family?
beginning, actually.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned this to Kyle. I don't know if I said this to you yet. In the beginning, when Korg was saying, the initial here's what happened with Thor. First of all, the Jane Fonda joke cracked me immediately.
Yeah.
When Korg can't get Jane Foster's name right, and he's like, "This is Jane Fonda." I cackled in the
He said
movie.
Jodie Foster later
I was
on.
the only one that laughed out loud. Like, I don't know if you
Yeah.
noticed that. Like, I heard you chuckle,
Yeah.
but I was the only one. And
I did
couldn't
laugh a
believe
lot
it.
at the Jodie Foster.
Jodie
That got me.
Foster was good too. But back to what I was
Yeah.
saying, in the beginning, Korg's kind of like, he's kind of making fun of the other Thor movies, right? And how
Totally.
haphazardly they've been thrown together. Notably, when he's talking about how much Thor has lost, he goes, well, he lost his mom. And then he gets to the Warriors 3 and he's like, and that guy, and that guy, and that guy, because nobody remembers their names. Marvel doesn't even remember that they were in their movies, right?
Yeah.
I'm surprised Sif was even in this for more than 30 seconds.
I kind of forgot that happened.
Right.
All those
But
guys getting
when
slayed.
Ragnarok came out and the Warriors died, I'm like, dude, why? And then there was a part where and then he lost his brother, and then his brother again, and then his brother again. You know what I mean? Like, there's the Taika Waititi satire.
That was all Taika Waititi. Totally.
Yeah, it's poking through. It's funny. I mean, that's the kind of comedy that Taika Waititi is just so
something else.
at.
Something else that I'm thinking of now too is how funny Matt Damon was. That other guy.
Oh yeah, that was the other Hemsworth brother. That was Luke Hemsworth playing Thor. And I knew it. In the theater, I'm looking at Odin. I'm like, that's got to be Sam Neill playing Odin, right? And then I forgot about it, and I looked up the cast list after the movie. I'm like, God damn it, that was Sam Neill playing Odin. So,
because I reckon I'm like that Thor looks very much like Chris Hemsworth, so that obviously makes sense that it was his brother.
I'm so happy they brought back Matt Damon to play Loki in a play about Loki.
Those scenes were, they had me laughing a lot. And again, like, that's what I think that's what we're doing it right now. You pick apart which, were the Taika Waititi moments and what weren't.
Yeah.
And those definitely were all his. So I just think if they had more of that and less of, the childlike humor, I think we both would have enjoyed this movie, a lot more. And honestly, who knows, if Taika Waititi wanted to, have Jane Foster take over, but Marvel had other plans for her.
Yeah.
Whatever. They probably have some Valhalla show planned that they're going to make money off of.
Valhalla spin-off show. I
mean, at this point, who knows? But yeah, I mean, the Taika Waititi comedic moments, you could definitely easily stand out, and were some of the most memorable, funniest, most enjoyable parts of the movie for me by far.
Yeah. I mean, one of my favorite parts of The Mandalorian was at the end of season 1, in the final episode that was directed by Taika Waititi. You have these 2 stormtroopers hanging out by their speeder, and they see a rock, and they're like, I can shoot that rock. They're like, no, you can't. Try it. and they just cannot hit the rock. I mean, that is the stuff that Taika Waititi is so good at. I was dying when I was watching that scene.
Yeah,
that was so funny. But you know, Marvel.
Yeah, I mean, I think Taika Waititi's meant for other ththings outside the MCU, because I think his comedic brilliance is definitely needed elsewhere, because I'd love to see it in the MCU, but again, as we've discussed about before, the studio has to get their hands on, you know, the final cut of the film. So
yeah, I mean, that's just not Marvel. Marvel's just one of the biggest studios right now. So
right, yeah. So it's a, you know, detriment of the entire genre, as we know with Warner Brothers and DC for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Any kind of final thoughts, expectations, where you think it's going?
I was just thinking the same thing. I mean, if Thor's adoptive daughter comes in as like a young Avengers kind of thing, then like, okay, I get it. But at the same time, it's like they're gonna have to do a huge time jump, or else she's just gonna feel like the runt of the group, even if she does have the powers of eternity. But I don't know. I mean, the movie was fine. I feel like we touched on all the important stuff that we needed to, right? I mean, I will say one last joke that really got me was at the end when Korg was like, "Oh, I'm having my own little Korg baby with a guy named Dwayne," and it was just
hilarious.
A guy made out of rocks, but his name was Dwayne. That was funny.
I did see Aiden just cringing that entire scene.
What do you do? That's Aiden.
Just kidding, Aiden.
Aiden doesn't like rocks. That's the problem, everybody. Aiden doesn't like rocks.
But yeah, I mean, I guess you know, some final takeaways or final thoughts. I guess something I sort of discuss is like, where do you see the MCU going from here? Or let me put it this way: where do you want them to go from here, and then where do you think they'll go from here?
Okay, where I want them to go from here, that ship sailed a couple of years ago.
It really did.
Sorry.
It really did. Oh, somewhere Owen Barton's just laughing his ass off, telling him he told us so.
You're right.
To that I say fuck you, Owen.
You're right. Where I see the MCU going. Okay, that's a different question. So I genuinely think that for the next, maybe, let's just say 5 years, okay? Let's assume the MCU is going to go on forever, right? Yep. For the next 5 years, it's just going to be introducing new characters. Because so far in the MCU Phase 4, you have Yelena, Kate Bishop, Shang-Chi. I'm already forgetting Miss Marvel.
The Hawkeye side character.
Yeah, Kate Bishop. Oh, Speed and Wiccan, White Vision. A lot. You have a lot. Okay.
Yeah.
And then there's Ironheart coming out soon that nobody asked for. There's a lot. Just trust me, there's a lot. So I think that what Marvel is going to try and do is just introduce new characters until the field becomes kind of oversaturated. And then they're going to do what they did back in the day with Netflix, and they're going to regulate certain characters to what have been dubbed street level heroes. Oh, Moon Knight was another one. So they're going to regulate those to street level heroes and have another group way up here that are like the main Avengers, right? So Doctor Strange, America Chavez is another one, I forgot her. Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, Thor, all of them. It's like the main Avengers, but then down here you have like Miss Marvel, Moon Knight, Daredevil coming back. Do you know what I mean? And they're going to have to split it. And as we've said before, I think in our Doctor Strange one, maybe, or the one before that, but they're going to have like a tree, right? And the trunk is going to be kind of like the main story that's been going since 2008 and continue to go. But then they're going to have all these branches that come out, and it's like, well, here's Daredevil. And they're only doing Daredevil because people want Daredevil, but they don't really know what to do with it. Oh, but here's also Jessica Jones because she's coming out of that. But now Moon Knight and Miss Marvel, and these ones aren't really like going to connect to the big trunk. but you need
Right.
the trunk for those. And it's just
Yeah.
going to keep growing and like ever expanding. And now with No Way Home, you can even consider like the Amazing Spider-Man is one of the branches, or Venom is one of the branches, or, you know, Bryan Singer's X-Men is one of the, sorry, can we not say Bryan Singer? You know, the X-Men is one of the branches.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's
Yeah.
just like, it just feels like, it feels like oversaturation is the way they're going.
Totally.
I'll leave it at that. Oversaturation.
As always, I think you're right on the money, and will sadly, unfortunately, be right.
Thank you. I read a
But
lot
I
of
don't
comics.
know. I hope we're both wrong in that sense.
Me too. Me too. 100%. I hope I'm wrong.
And they have something, you know, bigger planned. You know, like a leading up to a new Avengers type cast with, you know, the experienced first Avengers or whatever the hell you want to reference them now as. But that's what I'm still hanging my hat on, is that this is leading towards something, and it's not just becoming, well, you know, we have a huge platform now, so we can just make whatever the hell we want. People will go see them. Who cares about connecting them? And again, like you said it, and I like to, as you put it, bringing them back to the main trunk that is the main MCU timeline.
Right. I will say one final thought that I forgot, and I think it's very important, is the first end credit scene, right, with Zeus, and he's being like patched up, and he basically tells his son Hercules to go kill Thor. And again, I don't remember if it was you or Kyle I was talking to about this. I was like, but you know, that end credit scene sounds really familiar. And I thought, it's kind of like the exact same thing as the end credit scene from Doctor Strange when Baron Mordo was like, too many sorcerers. Or the end credit scene of Guardians 2 when the gold lady, I think her name Aisha, was like, Adam Warlock's going to go kill the Guardians because we can't have the Guardians anymore. It's like, okay, so you've used the same end credit scene 3 times, right? And as of right now, none of them have been resolved. Even when the Doctor Strange end credits was in 2016, which for us is what, 6 years ago? But for the MCU is like what, 10 or something?
Yes, 10, yeah. That's a good point.
Where's Mordo been for 10 years? Where?
Yeah.
I mean, unless he got snapped, okay, fine, but still, like, come on, Marvel, use a different end credit scene, man.
Maybe they're with Doctor Strange. Maybe their cop out was, oh well, he was in Doctor Strange too, but it's like it wasn't really that.
Oh,
same
you know that's what their argument would be.
So, but yeah, and we've talked about it before. Again, not to get completely sidetracked, but with Adam Warlock, it's like cool, like you have him, but it was almost like too little, too late with him because, as you know, he's like a pivotal figure in the whole Infinity Gauntlet saga. So kind of sucks they weren't able to introduce him, earlier on. But who knows? Maybe now it's like Guardians 3, he'll get thrown in somehow, which would be kind of cool to see. But again, it's almost like it's like at this point though, like you just said, it's like, all right, 10 years later now, like Adam Warlock's been looking for the Guardians this whole time. Like I don't know how they'd center him as the villain,
I don't know,
hero around them. But
I think Guardians 3 also has to take into account the hunt for Gamora. So it's like now you get 2 storylines in one movie. It's like,
right.
I have all the faith in James Gunn, you know that, but like that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah. But yeah, so again, I think general consensus between us is definitely pessimistic about the outlook of the MCU.
But I'm pessimistic about everything.
Right.
Nothing new.
But we do still, hang our hats on. They know what they're doing to a degree. So,
and our helmets.
Hopefully they get back on track. But like I said, I don't know how many more films of MCU disappointment I can take before I just say, you know what, taking the completely casual back seat.
I don't have my hammer around here.
That's okay. I think they get the point.
Sorry. But yeah, that's it.
I think that's a wrap.
What's the next Marvel movie?
I have no fucking idea.
I have no idea. I really don't.
Not Guardians, obviously. That's like
no. I think that's next year.
Is it Ant-Man and Wasp: Quantumania?
No, that's next year.
That's another one.
Maybe the Marvels. Black Panther 2.
I feel like those are all next year.
Listen, I'm just stoked for Daredevil coming back, okay? That's it.
Yeah.
Daredevil season 4, baby. Let's go.
Yep.
I love Daredevil.
I'll have to catch up on the Defenders and then talk about them.
Maybe just like Daredevil.
Just Daredevil, okay.
And like the first 4 episodes of Luke Cage. And like season 1 of Jessica Jones. Seasons 1 and 2 of The Punisher. Yeah, that's it.
Gotcha.
Just Wikipedia the rest.
You know I take your recommendations very serious.
Just Wikipedia the rest, and it'll save you so much time.
But yeah, I don't know. I guess on the slate, as we keep teasing, is our top 5 films
Yeah,
that
we'll get there.
We'll get
there.
to some point. The
We'll
big
get there.
build up. But I don't know. I think him and I have talked about kind of having I guess a 2022 film slate up to date, I guess, the movies we've seen. So maybe a couple episodes on that down the line.
And I've got a big project I'm working on. Another new video.
Oh yeah. So yeah, keep an eye out on the channel for all that good stuff. But as always, tell everyone you know.
Tell your Space Guardians and
your
best friend made out of rocks.
But yeah.
Best friend not made out of rocks.
Anyone.
And most importantly, your grandma.
And your mailman.
And your mailman.
Yep. Can't forget that. But until next time.
And Aiden. Don't forget to tell Aiden.
Aiden, you gotta tell everyone, buddy. Until next time, just take it easy.